Hey, welcome back to the BGX podcast. My guest today is an aspiring board game designer, a father, and all around a great guy. Welcome to the show, David. It's great to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my
It's
pleasure.
great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you on. Why don't you get us started off today? Just sort of tell everybody about yourself and how did you get into board gaming in the first place?
Sure. Yeah. So I've always been a big fan of games for years. Dabbled a little bit in the Magic the Gathering once I got into junior high and high school. Parents were against it because of, magic and all that stuff, which is fine. I get it. But before that, as a child, Pokemon was a huge inspiration as far as the collecting and things like that. Did play some games. I've got actually the first game I ever remember playing is called Forbidden Bridge. The giant, basically it's a toy where you climb across a bridge and you hit the little head on the tiki, and the bridge will start swaying. You could fall off and lose the gems you're collecting. Yeah, that's the first game I remember ever playing, and then from there on, it's just been a gradual and steady, just collecting.
Sure. So you're into collecting? What's your collection look like right now?
So right now I've got a little under 200 games. Probably a good 40 of them, I'd say, are older than 20 years old.
Nice.
I've got some stuff that goes back to the 1930s, some 1940s. But a vast majority is, at least of the old stuff, is mostly just to look at and just tinker with.
Right. So what's your preference with collecting? I mean, there's so much you can collect with board games. Do you go really old? Do you go really obscure? I mean, what's sort of your preference?
It's definitely a good mix of both. And a lot of times it's more of just what the cover of the box looks like or the board. Because eventually I want to have a wall of just vintage boards.
Yeah.
Just a really cool backdrop.
So your passion for the hobby has obviously inspired you to become a game designer and design some games. So talk to me about making that transition from a player to now creating the games to be played too.
Yeah, so basically it came along the lines of I want to do more besides just buy and play. And I figured we can modify some rules on some regular games. And we did that a little bit. I mean, your typical house rules usually is where we started.
Yeah.
But I thought, let's really just jump in. I really enjoy D&D. It's like, but I really enjoy like the battle side of D&D. So what if we just had a game that's all about that? And so I spent the next couple months with crayons and rulers and made this massive, massive thing. And we called it Acrenas Labyrinth. And it was different size and different shape map pieces that you'd put together. And I went overboard, and when we put it together, it made like a 3 foot by 6 foot grid. It was huge, huge. Had custom cards that I had made up. I had made little treasure chests, which are kind of like your loot boxes in today's modern video games.
Sure.
And from there on, we thought, let's just try it out. 9 hours later, we realized this game's not ending. There's nothing to this. And I still have it. It's somewhere buried. But yeah, that's where it started. And then from there on, I thought, I want to start making games that my kids would want to play. And from there on, I've made just little tiny things here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. I mean, that could end up being your Cones of Dunshire, right? And
right, yeah.
End up in a conference room somewhere, and you're like, "How did you get this?" So, I heard Acrena. Obviously, that's your TikTok handle. So, tell me the story between I Am Acrena and what is the backstory there with the game?
Okay, so yeah, I Am Acrena. I've had that handle for years. It's on almost all my social medias. I use it on any kind of digital video gaming I do. And it all started back with RuneScape. It was one of the first generated names that it gave me. I just stuck with it ever since. And so I've probably had it for, 15 years.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. That's how I got my email address. I typed my name into Gmail when I was like 12, and it was like, "How about this?" And I was like, "Okay." And that's been my email ever since. So definitely encouraging my kids as they, get ready to get email addresses and stuff like, okay, think about what you're going to make that because you want to have a good
stuck with you for life.
The rest of your life. Right. So, yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned a little bit about house rules. I mean, tell me some of the house rules that you guys practice and how do you think it makes the games better?
So a lot of the house rules, like with Monopoly, if you had to mortgage your house, we actually would kick it out of the game completely.
Okay.
But you would still keep the the 4 house to hotel rule, but you would limit instead of 3 sets, you'd only have the 2 set. So you'd still be able to ramp up, but you'd end up losing more and more properties as you go along. And
Hmm.
that was the big one that we did, and it was devastating, devastating. Because
Interesting.
then once you lose it, you can't gain it back.
Right.
So you're really hurting after that.
Hmm.
Different things with chess, just mixing it up a little bit, but for the most part, it's all pretty basic card games and things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did a video a while back about Monopoly, saying that, perhaps instead of rolling, you should use one of these, and this is a number slider from like a one-player
Oh yeah, shut the box. Yeah,
and instead of rolling the dice, actually you get to pick a number off of here, but then to reset the numbers, maybe it costs money, because Monopoly is a capitalism game. Everything's for sale, including your rolls, including everything. So, somebody else needs an 8, you can sell them your 8, or they can buy it for themselves. So anyway, I had the idea of maybe switching up some rules in Monopoly to make it even more capitalistic than it already is. And truly everything is for sale. So.
That's good. I have to try that sometime.
Yeah, I'm curious to try. It probably, admittedly, it probably won't work. I'm no game designer, so admittedly, it probably won't work. But at least the theme will be evident throughout. That, oh yes, everything's for sale. I can buy your rolls or my rolls or anyone's rolls. So
yeah.
So tell me about your gaming group right now. I mean, are you playing a lot? What's coming to the table, and who are you playing with?
My gaming group is it's a sensitive thing right now. So before COVID and all that, I actually bought the house that I'm in currently, and I moved 30 minutes away from all of my close friends. And then COVID came in, and basically everything shut down.
Yeah.
So I had 2 things going against me there, and it was tough for a while, but now we're back at it for the most part.
Yeah, same group as before.
Mostly. Some guys have moved, and but for the most part, the same group.
And where do you guys get to get together and play?
Usually, it's either at my house or another friend's house.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't go to any cafes or anything like that.
Right.
We don't really have those in our area.
Yeah. I mean, they're starting to pop up here and there. Obviously, I'm opening one. They're starting to pop up here and there. I see, and it seems like every day I get on TikTok, there's another creator saying like, "Oh, I'm opening a game shop," and it's like, okay, great. Nobody's close to me, so I'm okay. But it's definitely exciting for the hobby to see so much traction and expanding places that you can play other than just each other's garages or whatever. So.
Yeah, we've actually got a fairly local group that they actually travel from like coffee shop to coffee shop, and once a month they'll set up all the games. Just have a big open house, basically.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So they don't have an actual location they stick to, but it's a pretty cool idea of how they did it.
That's cool. So talk to me about some favorite games of yours. I mean, what's what are some standouts in your collection?
I love pretty much any tile laying game. Those are my big things. But right now, my number 1 game is actually Return to Dark Tower.
Okay.
It is.
Got your hands on the copy?
Oh man, it's good. I know it's very polarizing. Either you love it or you hate it because of the app and all that stuff. But it really is pretty good. I've probably put a little over 20 hours into it, and every time it's something different.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I mean, so tell me about that. I've seen a ton of content from a lot of people about the tower and how amazing that is, but I haven't honestly seen a lot else about the game. So, I mean, give me your couple-minute review if you could of your thoughts at this point.
So it's definitely a very strategic game, but at the same time, it's really just you follow step by step and you work your way through it. You can play it without fighting any of the foes, for the most part. Sometimes they'll actually affect how the game ends up by making them harder, and they'll destroy buildings. But if you go quick enough, you can get to the adversary pretty fast without worrying about the little guys. But my biggest thing for it is the fact that every single time you play, it's going to be totally different from anybody else, unless you keep that seed and then plug that in.
Sure.
But for the most part, yeah, it's the the ability to add more to it in the future, because I know that they're doing another expansion soon.
Right.
Is just that opens up a lot of potential, and
Yeah.
that's always fun.
And does the game rely on the app a lot? I mean, is it basically a necessary part of the game?
It really is the way that they have the leveling up of the cards, and you gain advantages, and those actually affect the cards in a positive way.
Mm,
If you can't do that, because with the physical cards, if you did a physical card, you can't level it up and make it harder
sure.
without making it a legacy game. And then by the time you go to play it again, it's stuck the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's really the big thing, because the events that happen, that could be a deck of cards. How the things pop up onto the map, that could be a deck of cards or a dice or whatever.
Right.
So that's the main thing to it, is the app keeps those cards themselves changing.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of games now are leaning into apps and companion apps and sort of leaning into that, but then you see others that I feel like are sort of resisting, and obviously Legacy has gone totally the other way, like just destroy your game and
Right,
only
yeah.
play it once, right? So, I mean, what's your thoughts as a game designer and somebody who's into this space? Like, is one route better? I mean, which way do you lean?
So as a game stands, I would rather not have an app, because eventually that app's going to end up not being up to date.
Yeah,
A physical game will never have that issue.
right.
But at the same time, if you do have an app, you can change things as you go along. You can, add extra stuff to it. So there's both ways is really cool, but I definitely lean more towards just a standard. Just give it to me in physical form as is. Let's just go with it.
Yeah, yeah. I actually picked up a copy of a Monopoly game. So I don't actually know that I've shown my Monopoly collection yet, but I'm collecting Monopoly games just as I find them, and trying to get all the different obscure. I have Dogopoly, like
Hmm.
who cares? It's not to play; it's to look at. So I found a copy in a thrift store of a Monopoly version that uses an app, and
Hmm.
it has all kinds of different things, like 3 or 4 different win conditions. Like, there's a lot of different stuff about this game, but it relies on
Oh
the
wow.
app. And I went to download the app, and like the last time it was updated was like 2012 or 2013.
Oh man.
Like, it's been buried, and there's no way. And I even looked on Reddit, like, is there anybody who's open sourced the code or like
Hmm.
made a replacement app? And nobody has, of course, because why
Right.
bother? It's Monopoly.
Yeah.
Just go play the original. But it was a little disappointing, because I'd like to see what that game was, or at least what it was supposed to be. But obviously
Hmm.
the app is trash now. So
Yeah. And see, that's one thing that Restoration has said that they're going to do with theirs for Return to Dark Tower, is that they're going to open source it.
oh, okay.
But I don't know how that's going to work, and I'm sure they're going to hold on to it for as long as possible.
Yeah, I doubt they're going to open source it this year. That's for sure,
Oh yeah.
with the release going the way it is. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, looking at the trend toward legacy games too, and you see a
Mhm.
lot of games that have come out and done well now releasing legacy versions of the game, and and kind of exploring that route. Have you played a lot of those? I mean, what's your thought about that route by
I've
publishers?
I've not really played a full game. I've played a partial of Pandemic Legacy, but a lot of it just hurts to damage the actual game. It's like I can't do it. I can't do it. But I love the concept though. If there's a way to be able to revert it back to the original, then that'd probably be best. But at the same time, who's going to spend $60 on a game and realize, oh no, I can't play it anymore, and but at the same time, you're not going to fully regret it because the adventure you had on the way through it.
Sure. And I think, though, at the same time, I think games are about who you play them with. I mean, you
Right.
can have a great game and play it with a different group, and it's also a great game, but in a totally different way. And sometimes it's
Mhm.
fun to, experience that familiar game that you've played a million times with a brand new group, and sort of get to know people through that game, in that way.
Yeah, the group definitely makes or breaks a game.
Yeah,
It
for
could
sure.
it could be the best game in the world. everybody agrees. But if a few people in your group aren't enjoying it or aren't trying to have fun, it'll be the worst game you've ever played.
Right. Right. All it takes is that one sour apple at the table, right?
Yep.
Who's not just a sore loser, they're a sore winner and a sore player and a sore everything. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly game night is no longer fun. So I completely agree with you on that one. So you mentioned you love tile laying games. I actually
Yes.
just picked up my first copy of Carcassonne and played it the other night and had a great
Mm-hmm.
time with it. What are some others that you feel are indicative in that space and are a lot of fun?
Yeah. There was a Kickstarter that was done a few years ago called Bloom, and you're basically making your little flower garden, and you have to try to achieve different varieties of flowers. And so that's one of my favorite ones so far. And it's got like 3 different ways you can play it. You can play freestyle, kind of like how you play Carcassonne, just play it out on the table. And there's a kind where you actually use the board designed for it, and you build your garden, and your garden gets bigger, and so you have to prune back flowers, and it's makes you really have to think how you're going to play them, because once you play them, they stay unless you prune, but you can only prune so many flowers. Um, that's one of my favorites. There's one, I think it was called Dragon Island, but it's a hexagon shape that you place. It's a beast of a game. It's confusing if you actually have to sit down and fully read through the rules a couple times before you dive into it. But you're basically wizards trying to train dragons or something like that. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
There are definitely those games, right? That the book is thick and you got to read
Mm-hmm.
through it a couple times in order to be able to attempt the game. Have you found any life hacks or any ways around maybe doing that for people who are not ready to make the hour commitment to read the whole book?
I mean, there's plenty of YouTube playthroughs that you can find. Rodney Smith being one of the most popular ones right now,
Sure.
which he breaks them down pretty good. But yeah, it's really, if you can sit down for 10, 15 minutes to watch a good playthrough, pretty much anybody can pick it up and start going.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of the app. There's an app now called I think it's called Dized, and it basically has like fully
Yeah.
animated walkthroughs of games. And I mean, they have a limited library right now, but they're building.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that, and I have yet to play through a game with a group, but I've watched a lot of the videos just to learn about the different games I have that I haven't played yet.
Right.
And it's interesting to see it just kind of laid out in front of you, and it's fully narrated, voice actors and everything, and fully animated to show you exactly what to do and when to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't know, I think
I've
that's
seen it. I don't have it, but I've definitely seen it especially on TikTok. I've seen a couple
yeah,
different people talk about it.
yeah.
It looks good.
It's really it's an interesting innovation, right? And I think that's where you have the merge of technology and board games kind of going back and forth. And some people say, "Oh, give me the companion app," and others say, "Don't," because it might ruin the game in the future. 30 years from now, my grandkids can't play this because you're never going to update that app again.
Yeah.
So I think this is an interesting sort of middle ground where it's like you can play it without, but this will help you also, and that kind
Right.
of uses technology. So
Like I think it's 5 minute dungeon.
yeah,
Where
I
they have
actually
that timer.
yeah, it's funny. I volunteered at high school, as I was telling you before we got on. I volunteered at high school. I actually took 5 Minute Dungeon with me today and
Mm-hmm.
played it with some of the kids in between school and our musical. So we played through it, and they got through 3 bosses. They were very proud of themselves. So the first time though, they crashed and burned. I think they only made it through about 10 cards, and then the time was up. And I was like, you guys have to go a lot faster than that, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's the nicest way to scream at somebody to achieve a
yeah,
common goal.
right. Well, any other favorite game mechanics? I guess you talked about tile laying and
Yep.
kind of thing. So, what
I
else do you look for in a game?
enjoy deck builders.
Okay.
I'm terrible at them. Terrible at them, but I really enjoy them. Like Star Realms, Ascension being some of the big ones. I probably have 6 or 7 different ones. A couple I haven't played yet, just because I don't have the time. But yeah, I've got a few on my phone that I'll sit down for a little while and play. but I'm horrible at them. But I love them. It makes me feel good being able to buy, a deck of cards that I can play over and over again, have a different experience a vast majority of the time, but still not have to worry about buying extra stuff.
Well, are you active on Kickstarter? I mean, do you watch a lot of the projects that are going on there, and do you get into backing any of those?
I follow a good few.
Okay.
I've not backed any in a while. I've got a couple I'm looking at that are coming up. But I usually follow them just to see how they go and how they actually upload and interact. Because eventually I might do a Kickstarter for one of my games in the
Oh,
future.
okay.
But I'm also not a huge fan of crowdfunding because it's one of those. I'm very proud to not have to borrow money if I can't.
Sure, sure.
So, but I also understand, it's a good way to get it going.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely all the rage nowadays, right? With even a lot of bigger publishers launching games on Kickstarter, which is kind of a head
Yeah,
scratcher. Like, aren't you a multi-million-dollar company? Why do you
right.
need my $100? Remind me.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting shift in the market, I think, from the traditional, which back in the day it was, pitch to Hasbro and Milton Bradley, or
Right.
you know, or nobody will find out about your game forever.
Hmm.
And now it's, we can bring a lot more games to market, but there's also sort of, I feel like it's getting a little bit saturated, I guess, through the Kickstarter,
It is.
you
I
know.
saw. I can't remember where I saw the statistic, but it's like over 3,500 games released every year.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
you really have to stand out to actually get something going. And yeah, it's wild. It's how
Yeah.
many are out there.
So as somebody who is, thinking about doing that in the future, what have you found is the way to stand out, or who do you see that's doing that well?
It's it's all about the hook, as Seppi Yoon would say. Fight in the box games. It's all about the hook. You can find something that'll get people to get drawn into it, then that's where you get it. And sadly, a lot of it's jumping on trends, finding what the big thing is right now, and it kind of removes a lot of the creativity, I think. And as I say this, I found a few other designers recently who are designing games very similar to what I'm doing right now, with like foxes and hedgehogs and stuff. Which one of them you just talked to on one of your past
Mhm.
podcasts?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Chris.
yeah, Chris.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. His actually released, I think, tonight, at time of airing. So
Yes.
that's funny.
Yeah, it did.
Right,
So it's it's encouraging though, seeing how easy it is and the support that's out there.
right.
It's also terrifying that there's so many things already out there.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, full credit. Obviously, I've been a part of the board game community, I guess, for just the last few months. I mean, I've always loved board games, but really dove headfirst in, back in January. And I gotta say, the support in this community is incredible, and everybody is here to lift each other up. There's not a whole lot of backstabbing, or any
Right.
of that drama. It seems that sometimes happens in small communities like ours.
Hmm. Yeah, the community definitely supports itself, and and it's a lot of the fan base. They stand to their designers and their publishers. They'll call out people if they have to, which is phenomenal. That's probably one of the best things the industry could have, is that kind of support.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, David, if someone wants to find out more about your games, or find out more about your content, where can they find you online?
So I'm fairly regular on TikTok at I am Acrena, IAMACRENA. I'm also on other social medias, but I'm not super active on those. TikTok's the main one I'm working on right now.
Awesome. All right. Well, make sure you check out David and his TikTok, and we'll be looking for some games and hopefully a Kickstarter coming in the future. David, I really appreciate your time, and appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks.
Awesome.